Hi, my name's Dave, and we're going to talk about Disney. And me and Miko will hold this conversation, and we have a word from our sponsor.
Hello, I'm acting sponsor, entrepreneur of excellence. Did you know that the millennials don't want to be entrepreneurs because of who's watching this? Also, if you control the media, you control the world. And my friend Dave, he opened up by talking about who, Walt Disney?
Walt Disney, yeah.
Do you know why he opened up on Walt Disney? Well, think a thought and ask him in your thought. Why Walt Disney, Dave? 1, 2.
Because Walt Disney makes a lot of money and doesn't share its money.
So he doesn't share it. That's the punchline. Would you like to hear the joke, Dave?
Sure.
Okay. So if you have an advanced passport where you can cut the lines in security, you're considered better than. If you can afford an advanced tickets, Dave said the PNE doesn't work. Is it because it's military-owned grounds or because they don't make as much money as Disney, even though they have an infinity budget? Which one, Dave?
I think P&E wouldn't do it because of their land tax, and it costs them way too much money that they don't even own the land. And I think Disneyland actually owns their land and makes way more profit than the P&E does.
But didn't Fox buy Disney, Dave?
Yes.
Okay, Dave. So you know those advanced passes where you can go and skip the rides at the PNE or Disneyland to
Yes.
boycott all the poor shitty families?
Yes.
If they had a poor shitty family day only at Disneyland because the military with an infinity budget can't afford it, then do you think if they had a poor family day that 2 days a week so that they could skip all the rides, do you think all of the rich kids would show up that day to stare at all the poor kids and make them feel uncomfortable when they're in par having the same entitlement, Dave?
But you would have to decipher who is poor and who is rich, though.
But don't we have credit checks, Dave? In school, I remember in grade 4, they were asking, my teacher had to ask us questions that they said was privatized questions, and it was an anonymous survey in 1994, Dave, wanting to know if my parents own their own house, Dave. So if they have social insurances, then they should just be able to associate everybody that's poor because it's totally not anything like them, Dave.
But a company can't do that to you. That's the thing. A company can't take your social service or your SIN number and punch it into their computers because that's your personal information and that's against your civil rights.
Education is supposed to be a charity, though.
Education is, but not your credit score isn't.
But why would the teacher need to know, and who for?
Because they're teaching you logistics about life.
So they want to know the logistics about life of that kid's family can afford to have a house, and I have to move 13 times before I'm in grade 7. How many times did you move, Dave?
Twice.
Twice?
Yeah.
So then maybe we would try to associate it for how many times have you changed the mail? We can look into, I don't know, who owns the proceeds from the mail? Who owns the royalties from the mail?
The federal government.
So would a federal government know how many times each person has moved? And they might be
that's through a consensus, though.
Through a consensus. So wouldn't a natural consensus say that turbulence is having
You're talking about somebody's personal information, like their credit score, which is personal, which is you have the right to have your own papers safe in your own privacy.
Okay, well, civilians' life in taxes is worth $150,000. A small fryer chicken that lives for 3 months is worth about $5, Dave.
Yeah.
What do you think the fryer chicken thinks about these consensus, Dave? In the
Well,
demographic of
as long as
turbulence.
that Friar's Chicken is doing their taxes, if they don't do their taxes, they don't have any consensus.
So fryer chickens are worthless, and
Well,
they think
they can in their own account.
they did it in their own account.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it would be up to them to do their taxes to give that information to the federal government.
So could they do their taxes if they're born in a barn and they're not allowed to go and harvest the land because their tax denomination of deficit gets paid to the spirit tree of goat skins, Dave?
Well, I don't know. I don't know why you brought animals into.
Well, I'm just saying, if you want an animal to pay a property tax, it better be able to go and
Yeah,
make
but-
some fucking pay dirt without getting its blood spilled on the strawberries.
Yeah, but like you even if you're like as a human, even if you're collecting government checks, you still have to write in your income tax that you might not profit from it,
Yeah.
but you still have to do taxes to then those numbers and everybody. That's why they figure out how many people are in our country. That's how they figure out how many, who's under the poverty line and who's above the poverty line and stuff like that, right?
Okay, Dave, have you ever heard that if you put a chicken's head on the ground and you draw a line, it can't stop following the line, Dave? Like it's,
No,
have you ever heard
because
that?
I don't refer. Okay, I can't refer because animals don't have rights.
They should though.
I
Okay,
know.
okay, Dave. Dave, if
So
an animal,
we went from a rich person's like a CEO of the P&E or like a person that, well, I guess now it's a CEO of Fox that owns two different properties or running two different properties
yeah,
to let the people not animals,
yeah.
let the poor go in and for like a couple days a week to farm animals and paying taxes.
Okay,
So you can't compare the two.
I have one last question, Dave.
Okay.
Okay, if the chickens weren't in a barn and there was no people around to hear them, if a bear shits in the woods and nobody smells it, it might not shit in the woods at all because you wouldn't know. Who the fuck is the rooster waking up in the forest and telling them to get to fucking work and groom the trees if they're in a fucking barn or in somebody's backyard, Dave?
Sound travels.
Sound travels.
Yes.
So you think you're being heard right now by the what?
I'm being heard with the people that, as far as my sound can travel.
As far as
Right now,
an eagle's sound could travel pretty far, and they even have a
Yes.
chicken hawk.
yes. Okay, but my everybody's going to be different. Like right now, if I whistle,
Yeah.
I bet you 3 to 4 doors down could hear me. But right now, the neighbor couldn't even hear me.
Do you think that the Mason thinks the chicken is bad because it's afraid that in ascension it would cock-a-doodle-doo and then wake them up as little moles under their soil that they hate anyway, and then when the eagles scream at them, it terrifies them because they're just fun to catch and shred up?
No, I think like animals are like humans. Like some animals are different than humans because we all have a eternal clock in our system,
Yeah.
right? So some animals will sleep all day and hunt all night, right? Some animals will hunt all day and sleep all night.
If a chicken's a bad entity, if that's why we eat them, why do they sound so happy in the
But they're
mornings?
not a bad entity.
No? Why do they sound so happy in the morning? They sound fucking super happy when they first wake up.
100%.
They're like ready to go in and pay their taxes, but they're just not allowed to.
Well, because they're animals.
Oh, yeah. Dave, if you could change the world in one way with one wish, knowing that your prayers would be answered, what would you do? What would you ask for if not every? You know how they only have Make-A-Wish for the special people, Dave.
Yeah.
Well, what if today was your day to make a wish, based off of whatever the people like to listen to want to assume?
The biggest thing I would want to get rid of is probably. I would wish that everybody would love and not hate, because hate brings in racism, and racism is a big thing in North America, not just Canada and the U.S.
Do you remember that guy that we had at the house that was supposed to go and create racism by murking people's family and kids? Did you ever see that Spanish military guy?
No.
He was here with post-traumatic stress. He didn't last very long. He had to go. His job from our federal government or provincial or whatever or PNE was to go and create racism.
Yeah, that's just stupid.
That's fucking. So your dream.
I think racism is hate, though. Like, racism equals hate.
But so he was paid money to do that, and he didn't even know why he was doing it. What would that be classified? Would that be unclassified or declassified? Like the people aren't ready. Like the people.
Person to hate people.
I don't know who would do that. It's like they're just trying to create population control, or.
But that's not population control. That creates. What? Okay, thanks. That creates hate and not. Yeah, it creates death, but I would say it creates more fighting and more separation of people than bringing them together.
Do you think that when they told us to stay 6 feet apart in COVID, that there was a reason so that we couldn't socialize with one another?
Yeah, that's because our government wants to become democracy like China and control us as people and not live in a free country like we're supposed to. And that's taking away our rights as Canadian citizens. And we should be fighting like Americans. And like how now that there's a bill that if you're making $100,000 off of what are those things called? Not broadcasts, but podcasts.
Yeah.
In Canada, you have to register with the federal government and tell them what you're saying and doing and stuff like that on your podcast. That's not right. We should be able to be free to speak to the people about whatever we want.
Well, so when your phone's being tapped, Dave, and they're allowed to listen to your phone call for 30 seconds to listen to keywords on an open radio podcast, wouldn't they be allowed legally to listen to it 24 hours a day and maybe even love people expressing opinions?
Well, our liberal government right now, no.
No, they don't like other people. But so we don't.
Our conservative government would. He wouldn't care. He's behind the people that want a free country and free speech and freedom of movement. And like why did they cancel those people's accounts when the truckers were protesting in Ottawa? Why did they call them racist and fucking Nazis and shit?
So if
when they were peacefully protesting.
So I'm gonna just play with the word conservative. I want to conserve things, and then I'm gonna play with the word liberal. I want to liberate the conserved things. I want to, I don't know, embody the earth with beautiful surroundings by finding each a conservative notion and being liberated, and then delegating it to circumvent future problems because of the heartstring of theory, knowing that every layer of government makes sense. If there's passion without fighting, they can get a lot more done. Because they're just little kids, man. They're little fucking shitty kids. But even little shitty kids, their parents should listen to them, because if they're told they can't do something, then by an older person, then they might believe it, Dave.
There's no problem with having ideas, but you can't go upon stepping on people's our chart. We have a charter of rights, and in the States, they have also, well, ours is called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And in the States, they have the Charter of Rights.
So,
And they, when you start going against that, that's when the problem comes into having everything beautiful. Because if they get rid of those, then the government will control you, and then the government will tell you that you can't have that beautiful, lovely place that you want.
so if the president is just merely a puppet, let's pretend that he's just a puppet, that it doesn't really matter what he thinks if his opinion isn't heard or he can't actually move a mountain, would he just be there to be the eyes of attention for a fall down so that they can be sneaky around the back? Or do you think opposite, that we don't really need a government, we just need to know who's making these decisions and why? Or
we need a government so that we keep the peace within the world, because there's other presidencies or premiers in the world that if we would stop talking to them or stop talking to the rest of the world, they might find hate or tell us that we're racist, or there'd be a lot more wars happening if there was no communication without but to the people of the country, you can't take away their civil rights as a Canadian or American citizen.
so through home economics, what we're talking about today, do you think that the language of the souls of being a public voice of adherence would require anybody in charge to at least practicing patience through an artistic and creative form to try to channel other people's emotions if they're going to need to express through them?
Well, they did that already.
Donald Trump show?
No.
Oh.
Trudeau did that.
Trudeau did. I'd never seen that episode. But why is it that the ambassador of China didn't even want to shake Trudeau's hand? Because Donald Trump didn't. So then shouldn't those two have to go and sing with Trudeau?
Because I think Trudeau fucked up with China, but Trudeau loves the way that China runs their country as a democracy.
So would you think that the most hostile, the hostiles in government should be eaten, or should be trying to woo kids up off the ground through peace, love, and charity? To
100%, and that's what Canada's supposed to be like.
That's
and
what
Trudeau's fucked that up.
So when we have all these hostile people in prison, shouldn't the music class be done with them?
Okay, when it comes to prison, I have a completely different aspect of it. You do the crime, you do the time.
Eye for an eye.
An eye for an eye.
But what about the people that are above the law, the ones with that money pass for the PNE?
We should be able to sue the people that think that they're above the law, like the RCMP or like city police that do wrong, like that broke Buddy's finger. He should be able to sue for compensation.
Who would help them sue? Legal aid?
Or like a constitutionalist lawyer.
They're pretty busy with corporations.
No, a constitutional.
Charlie's Chocolate Factory. Can you do me a favor and finger the camera?
Here, I'll do you one bit. I'll do you one even more. I'll give you 3 middle fingers.
3 middle fingers.